It is Sunday, the 10th of May, and I thought I'd read a couple more of the awakening letters, varieties of spiritual experiences in the life after death. These are letters from the afterlife, channeled through Cynthia, Lady Sandys, who with her friend Rosamond Lehman worked for 30 years bringing messages from the afterlife. They recounted the afterlife experiences of their daughters Sally and Patricia, who both died young and in tragic circumstances. This book was published in 1979, and I am reading now in part 5, and these are letters from Dorothy, Patricia's aunt. She lived a frustrated life on earth. Finding she could produce a dream house, she used it for the reception of all kinds of people, some advanced and others less so, who found themselves suddenly on the next plane. Subsequently, she entered the sea and made contact with all sea creatures. She is writing here this next letter. Dot herself continues her story. I want to tell you about my life among the sea creatures. I began my new life at Gwyddor and eventually followed it on to the shore and fell in love with sea life. I was allowed to enter solid rock, which I no longer found solid, and so I became almost at one with the earth vib. V-I-B, I think we say vibe now. But still, I returned to the sea and worked with the sea creatures. I explored the oceans and learned from them the sea lore and the history or legends of the incarnation of Christ among the sea creatures. He came among men as a man. He came among the sea creatures as one of themselves. He overlighted first the whale and then the dolphin, the seal, and so on, through the greater and lesser forms of sea life, and they accepted him and withdrew to formulate their own ways of advancement. I was horrified at first that our Christ should have entered the spirit body of a sea monster, but I soon accepted it. They communicated all this to me, sometimes by sound, but more often by the movement of their pricelessly flexible bodies. Movement is the medium of sea talk. I began to learn it and to enter into their delightful sense of flexibility, taking from them the sheer joy of movement. That is Christ-given, they told me. Our movement and your laughter are one and the same vibration. This gave me pause for thought, and I lived among these strange creatures, loving them, and they loving me, with an amazingly unpossessive love, which was quite beautiful. One day I noticed the most glorious light shining in the depths. I thought at first that it was the blue light from earth, but I very soon realized it was the Christ presence among the sea folk. The moment in time when Christ enters the water and revitalizes it with its flaming presence, with his flaming presence. Then everything began to glisten, and the sea itself danced with its teeming mass of myriad types of life, and all life worshipped him. Next letter is from Joe. Christmas and the enjoyment gland. This is a good moment for telling you my news. I've been Christmasing in quite a different way. I always thought it was rather pointless the way we ate and drank and gave parties, and some went to church to sing carols about things they knew and cared nothing about it. It was all so silly. Now I've had a peek behind the scenes, and what a Christmas we have over here. No feasting and drinking. Well, I don't mind that. I was afraid I'd be asked to think deeply and do all kinds of mental work, but no. I was just told to watch and see what I could and enjoy it. That was the big purpose. Open yourself to enjoy everything. There seems to be an organ in this etheric body which they call the enjoyment gland. They say we all had it on earth, but a great many people let it wither away from lack of use. And certainly I knew a few in that category. But although mine was not well developed, it was still there, and I knew how to enjoy certain things. My new organ can enjoy almost anything, and exponents of this faculty volunteer to go back to the material plane and the lower etheric planes and lend enjoyment to the simpler forms of life. Douglas told me he always did this at Christmas, and would I like to go with him. Of course, it was much more mine line than sailing up into the ether and lodging temporarily among the more advanced. I loved the old earth, so I was given some training on how to approach those in the body, and off we went. Douglas, as you know, is very keen on music, so it was through the music vibe that we came into touch with earth. Carols, Good King Wenceslas, and all that. I loved to find it all going on as usual, and I enjoyed it. My gland was working well. We went into several houses with children who were whooping it up properly, and then on to a pub where a lot of people were trying to comfort themselves with a lot of whiskey. Here I met for the first time a number of the simpler etherics whom Douglas has worked with. They were not actually alcoholics, but they still found most of their pleasure in swigging down whiskey. This all seemed very natural to me, and yet rather pointless. They weren't getting any real enjoyment. I tried to give them the feeling I used to have, but it seemed very unsatisfying, and I was losing touch all around. I looked for Douglas, who was laughing away with a group of etherics, telling them they'd better pack it all in and come and try some of our vintages. One of them said, "All right, let's go." The man looked a hardened old soaker, but he'd come to the end, and he turned on me as a newcomer and said, "It's bad stuff here, nothing worth tasting. Have a drink?" I took the glass he offered and tried to drink it. It looked all right, but during the last month I've lost all taste for it. So it was strange to me and tasted sour. Douglas whispered, "It's not your liquor, Daddy, any longer, don't touch it." But one had to accept a drink. In a moment I began to feel fuddled and awful. There was something in the drink that burnt me. "Enjoy it," said Douglas. I made a great effort to do so and recovered instantly. Was this the key to depression? I looked round and found an old man in an etheric, but still old, so I went up to him and said, "Having a good time?" He shook his head. "Nothing any good now," he said wearily. I began working my new gland on him, and he relaxed. Well, I suppose it's not so bad really, but one was led to expect more than this. "What did you expect?" I asked. "Oh, well, I suppose I expected a heaven of some sorts, but this was all I found." "Did you really believe in heaven?" said Douglas breezily. "Well, no. I thought it was all my eye, but something has to happen, doesn't it?" "Well, it depends on you. Have you had enough of this? Would you like to see a little more of heaven?" "Yes," he replied, "but I haven't seen anything yet." "Come with us, and we'll show you something more." He came rather unwillingly, and Douglas saw that the man had worked with machines in a factory, and took him to the area where the thought creation takes form. He looked mystified and asked what it was all about. "It's your old factory on this plane. I thought you'd like to see the production level here." "But where are all the benches and machine tools?" "They're in your mind. No need to turn screws and nuts. Here you'll do it by thought, and the contrivance for speed travel becomes a ray of moving light. It's what I used to see when a train passed quickly in the twilight. Yes, that is just the moment you see both sides. Suddenly all sense of disappointment and depression fell away from him, and he began as interested and as young as I was feeling myself. I was rather empty. I'd given all I had by this time, and Dee told me to go back to my own plane and think this over. It certainly had given me a lot of food for thought. So I stop this here. I'm going to do a couple of letters. I hope you're enjoying your Sunday. I do.